Hello, hello, and good morning. Happy Thursday, April the 24th. I am Manila Chan. That over there is Ted Rall. You're tuned in to the Ted Manila Information Show, or just the TMI Show for short. We bring you way too much information, all of the stuff that you needed to know, everything you didn't ever think you wanted to know. Today's probably going to be one of those days. We kind of had a last minute change in programming, but I promise you, we will not disappoint. It's going to get hot at the end of the show on our last topic, which you can probably tell if you're looking at the thumbnail. If you're consuming this on YouTube or on Rumble, it's gonna get spicy towards the end of the show, and we're even allowing producer Robbie to weigh in on that one.
Oh boy.
So we are. I'm
Fortunately,
warning you now.
He doesn't have strong opinions about this topic, so it's okay.
Oh, sure, not at all. I'm going to warn you guys now, if you're consuming this on YouTube, that we are going to drop out of the YouTube feed. We're going to take a pause and drop out of the YouTube feed, so that way we don't get dinged by the censors.
25 minutes or so.
Towards the back, the back half of the show. We're going to drop out of the YouTube feed because it is too risky for our little fledgling show to get dinged by YouTube, especially on this particular topic, because again, as suggested by the thumbnail, this is one of these, I guess we can call it protected topics, Ted, protected issues.
It's a landmine. It's an ideological landmine. Trouble will likely ensue.
Yeah. And we're too young and new of a show to risk that sort of ding from YouTube. So if you're watching,
we've been dinged already, and we don't want to.
Exactly my point. We're not Joe Rogan, where we can fight back. You know what I mean? If they decide to screw us, we're screwed, like, permanently. We cannot fight back. We're not Joe Rogan. We're not one of these. We're not Steven Crowder. We're not able to fight back with that sort of heft. So
has Joe Rogan been censored by YouTube?
Oh God, are you kidding me? During COVID? Oh my God!
I don't know. I have to. So confession time. I have never watched Joe Rogan except like through an entire. I've seen like little excerpts, but I've never watched an entire show.
He is the granddaddy of podcasting.
I'm aware.
I mean, it was.
I know who he is. I know who he is. I just haven't,
And a cultural phenomenon. I think Rogan is literally one of these social, an influencer in society.
Oh, there's no question.
And you haven't listened to a whole show?
No, I know. It's like, I'm not bragging about it. It's definitely an oversight. It's something that I just haven't gotten to. I should, obviously. I mean,
when you're out bike riding or whatever.
I'm a podcaster. I say I should. It's weird. I mean, I don't really consume a lot of podcasts, so that's part of the issue.
I do. So I'm putzing around the house doing household chores, or back when I used to drive into a studio every day. That's where I consume my podcast or audiobooks or whatever. But Rogan, I'm not going to say I listen to every single episode. Obviously, I don't have that kind of time. But I'll say I'm a fan. And I listen regulally. Let's say that enough to, more than a few times a month. So
I've also never seen a Charlemagne the God all the way through, except maybe the Biden one. Maybe I saw that one.
Yeah. I've not seen all of those either. Funny thing about Charlemagne the God. So around 9 or 10 years ago, I got a text message from Charlemagne the God.
Oh yeah.
By accident.
Oh, that's funny. Wait, was it a signal chat? Was he telling you about someplace he was planning to bomb?
This is like 10 years ago, so none of that existed. So It was a regular SMS text message. And, I'm from Los Angeles, so I have a Los Angeles phone number. Charlemagne is in New York City. So Charlemagne was trying to reach somebody. I can't remember who it was, but he was trying to reach somebody. This is like
the plot of, what was that movie? Miracle Mile, where someone's trying to call someone in and the area code has changed, and the whole.
Oh, funny. I don't remember that.
Yeah.
Well, but yeah, he was trying to reach somebody in Los Angeles. got me.
So did you say? So what happened?
So I can't remember if I only texted and then called or called and then but either way, it was revealed that it was Charlemagne the God, and it was like, "Oh, sorry, yeah, wrong number. Have a nice day."
That
I
was it.
thought and then I thought, well, at the time, he wasn't that controversial with his
Mm.
podcast. He didn't I don't think
Mhm.
he had his podcast. He had his radio show.
Mm.
Uh, what is it? Zoo something in New York
Oh,
City.
Z100.
Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
that's it. He had his radio show back
Mm-hmm.
then, and he hadn't podcasting wasn't a thing 10 years ago, except for Joe Rogan. So that was my whole exchange because at the time it was like, that's weird, Charlemagne the God. And I revealed who I was, and I don't know if he ever looked up who I was, but I was on RT at the time, so they're like, okay, well, have a nice day. That was it.
So you've had his. So you have his digits.
I do. I'm presuming it's the same.
Mm-hmm.
But I've never doxed him.
Thing about funny people, famous people, is they often have surprisingly predictable and easy Gmail addresses. I bet you can call it's
Charlemagne.
It's probably Al
Gmail.
Pacino at gmail.com.
Right.
Probably
Al Pacino
better than 50%
underscore
chance.
Al Pacino underscore hua at gmail.com. So yeah, it's probably something like that. But anyway, that's most people though, Ted. Celebrities are no different. But anyway, that's our warning for you viewers and listeners out there today. Towards the back half of the show, maybe 30 minutes from now, we're gonna drop the YouTube feed. So you have been warned because
so you might want to, if you want to listen to the whole thing, you might want to migrate over to Rumble between now and then.
We have to drop the YouTube feed. Other than that, we are traditionally live on all the platforms at
except
10
audio,
Eastern.
Right? We're not live in audio.
Oh yeah, we're not live on audio, but we are.
Which is dumb.
We do give you a show Monday through Friday.
There's no way for us to be live on audio unless we got a radio show, unless a radio thing came back.
Radio.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're live everywhere else Monday through Friday, 10 a.m. Eastern. So guys, please be sure to like and follow this show. Guys, gals, theys, thems, others, whatever.
Cats, dogs.
Whatever. Like the show, follow it, subscribe, and you might unsubscribe after the back half of the show.
Oh my God. Which will be all Manila's fault, not mine. For once.
I brought up this topic in our group chat, and
we were barking about it, and then I suggested, since we often agree a little too much, so it was like, okay, well, here's something that we argue about. So let's
is one of the things the three of us in this team.
Yeah, we argue about.
We don't agree.
Three different opinions, I'd say. It'd be fair to say.
Yeah. Very, very different takes on this. So
there's Robbie versus me, and you're in between us, I think.
I'm the overlap of both of you. So So anyway, stay tuned for that, because Robbie, as you guys know, kind of sets things on fire.
Well, I consider that to be a feature, not a bug. But yeah.
Yes, I agree. All right, so with that, I'm going to go ahead and hit the jaws. We'll do the news, you and I, Ted, and then we'll bring in Robbie towards the end of the show.
And
by the way, don't talk until the jaws is completely off the screen, because the system mutes us until the screen is clear.
Really? So the jaws are audio greedy.
Yes.
So the jaws are basically like my ex-wife. The jaws won't let me talk.
Ted, oh my God. Okay. Hit the jaws.
Done, jaws. Jaws, are you done? Can I talk now? Okay.
Now you can be heard. The jaws has to clear the screen entirely.
Thank you, Mrs. Jaws. Okay. Anyway, here we go. President Trump and his top aides are demanding that Ukraine agree to a U.S. proposal that would grant Russia all of the territory it has gained in the war, while offering vague security assurances to Ukraine. The U.S. plan would also prohibit Ukraine from joining NATO. President Volodymyr Zelensky of Ukraine said niet. His long-running dispute with Trump broke out into the open, of course, 2 months ago in the Oval Office. Who can forget that? This proposal appears to call for the U.S. to recognize Russia's 2014 takeover of Crimea also. There's nothing to talk about, Zelensky said. This violated our constitution. This is our territory, the territory of Ukraine. I don't know that, by the way, like the constitution argument really,
his constitution
really make, by the way, what also violates your constitution? Not holding any elections for years for any post whatsoever.
Maybe he's taking the Mahmoud Abbas approach.
Right. Like, hey, he's aging like a fine cheese. By the time he's 100 years old, we'll just love him. Yeah, left in the sun, in the gutter.
Oh, boy.
Anyway.
Well, look, here's what Trump said. Because Zelensky ran his big mouth. And this is, Ted, people can think whatever they want about Donald Trump. They can love Zelensky, but whatever. It was laid to bear when he got into that shouting match with J.D. Vance at the Oval, and Trump kicked his ass out. They were supposed to do lunch. They were supposed to do all of that stuff. And that didn't happen because Zelensky shot off at the mouth. And
as he does.
But nobody pulls this kid back in line, right?
Well, and who dares to? Honestly, he is a dictator. So there is that.
Well, that's true. But if you were smart, you don't bite the hand that feeds you. And the United States has been the hands that have been feeding you.
Yeah, and feeding you 5-star meals, delicious, scrumptious, embezzleable meals.
Yes, and especially you don't shoot off at the mouth to someone like Donald Trump. So here's what Donald Trump said on his truth. He truthed this. He truthed this. He said, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky is boasting on the front page of the Wall Street Journal. Ted, that's your people, the Wall Street Journal.
Those are my people.
Those are your people. Quote, Ukraine will not legally recognize the occupation of Crimea. There's nothing to talk about here. End quote. This statement is very harmful to the peace negotiations with Russia, in that Crimea was lost years ago under the auspices of President Barack Hussein Obama and is not even a point of discussion. Nobody is asking Zelensky, that's true, to recognize Crimea as Russian territory.
Right. That's true. That's what I was going to say.
Ain't nobody asked you.
It's kind of like, it's like you're saying no to something that nobody's asked you.
Nobody asked your opinion on that. But if he wants Crimea, why didn't they fight for it 11 years ago when it was handed over to Russia without a single shot being fired? The area also houses, for many years before the Obama handover, major Russian submarine bases. It's inflammatory statements like Zelensky's that make it so difficult to settle this war. He has nothing to boast about. The situation for Ukraine is dire. He can have peace, or he can fight for another 3 years before losing the whole country. I have nothing to do with Russia, but have much to do with wanting to save, on average, 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week. Let's be honest, it's mostly Ukrainian, but Russians too, but yes, mostly Ukrainians, who are dying for no reason whatsoever. The statement made by Zelensky today will do nothing but prolong the killing field. So we're taking this
he likes he must have heard of the movie. He likes movies. So I thought
he's never heard of Pol Pot, but he's like, the killing field.
I bet in no way he watched The Killing Field. It's like, very depressing.
He's heard of the term.
Yeah,
he said nobody wants that. We are very close to a deal, but the man with no cards to play should now finally get it done. I look forward to being able to help Ukraine and Russia get out of this complete and total mess that would have never started if I were president. Now, breaking just now, Ted. He truthed again. I didn't have time to pull it up, but he truthed again after last night's terrible strikes in Kiev that killed probably the most people in the past year.
Yeah, by the way, that's Putin taking a page, or Putin's generals taking a page out of the American playbook.
Oh, yeah.
Right before peace talks.
Right before peace.
You bomb the shit out of your opponents. Yeah. I don't think it's a good idea, personally.
I don't like any of it.
I think it's a mistake.
But here's the new truth. The newest truth is, quote, I am not happy with Russian strikes on Kiev. Not necessary and very bad timing. Vladimir, stop. All caps. Stop.
I saw that.
5,000 soldiers a week are dying. Let's get the peace deal done. So, Vladimir, stop. So,
Well, I mean,
we shouldn't laugh. 'Cause
you know, I'm not a, you know, I'm very pissed off at Trump over these deportations and arrests of people for exercising their First Amendment rights and wanting and you know, refusing to bring that guy back from El Salvador. That shit is fascist and he's horrible and he sucks. That said, he's 100% right about this Ukraine situation.
Yes.
You know, and he's totally right about Zelensky. So yeah,
Okay.
it's I mean, yeah, and I don't know what he's talking about. Like, it's not in the Constitution. Who cares? I bet it wasn't in the Constitution of South Vietnam to be invaded by North Vietnam and lose the war. Your Constitution is worth it. I wipe my ass with your Constitution.
Worthless. Yeah, it's worthless if you're going to change it, you know, on every whim that you have and say that I'm the ruler now until
Look,
TBD.
Here's the thing: Ukraine is not being asked to acknowledge. But let's get serious here.
Oh,
and by the way, the propaganda is amazing to me. How effective the media has been at pulling the wool over the eyes of otherwise educated, intelligent Americans about Ukraine. I mean, you know, how many Americans even know that Crimea really, you know, it's a weird accident of Soviet history that it was ever in Ukraine in the first place. I mean, it wasn't really supposed to be. I mean, it was the 500th anniversary of Ukraine, and during when the USSR was a big happy family of 15 republics, you know, Premier Khrushchev, I believe it was in 1953, perhaps.
And he liked to drink, Ted. Let's not forget.
Well, he was Russian, and Khrushchev was like, oh, wouldn't it be nice? So he like gave to the Ukraine.
I'll give this to you guys.
Yeah, give this. I mean, that
give to you.
It would be like if, you know, Governor Hochul decided, like, you know, we're not doing anything with Staten Island. We're going to give it to New Jersey, and it wouldn't really matter because Staten Island would still be in the same country. There would be no borders, and then suddenly all the U.S. splits into 50 different independent countries, and then, you know, Staten Island is suddenly in the new Republic of New Jersey, and then you know, but all the people who live there are like, but we're New Yorkers, we want to be in New York, and it's like, then there would be problems, right? And then it's like, then for New Jersey to be like, no, it would violate our Constitution. It's always been. It's like, no, Crimea's. I mean, you know, it's 60+%.
It's Russian speaking. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a Russian place. Main language. Historically, it's always been Russian. It's a very strategic, important Russian port. Khrushchev never should have done that. It was a stupid mistake.
I'm telling you, he was drunk, Ted.
And if you brought him back, well, he was a smart man, though. If you brought him back now, he would do takebacks. He'd be like,
oh, for sure.
He would not. He'd be like, oh, I didn't realize 1991.
And Zelensky's like, no takebacks, no do-overs.
Yeah, there would be a do-over there. So, I mean, Crimea is like, I mean, I think even Donbass isn't that complicated, but also nobody knows this history about, like, you know, like, in the New York Times article today, recapping the whole history of the war, they're like, make it like, well, first it's like Putin invaded Crimea, and then he's like, yeah, now I'm going to invade Eastern Ukraine. Yeah. It's like, that's not how it went at all.
Ted, fuck 1,300 years of Russian civilization. History started in 2013 when there was conflict in Crimea.
Right, obviously. Yeah, well, it's sort of like for the, you know, pro-Israel people, you know, but you know, nothing happened in between Israel and Palestine before October 7th, 2023.
Well, obviously, Ted. Well, we should finish reading the rest of
the
details of this
article. All right. I have a lot to say about all this. Anyway, Trump suggested that the proposal was on the verge of acceptance by Putin. I think we have a deal with Russia, he told reporters at the White House. By the way, I think that's probably right. You know why I think that's probably right? Because the Russians didn't say anything. Okay. Yes. So the Russians didn't say, you know, we didn't hear from Lavrov, who would have said, well, not so fast. We like it, but they have not said anything. So probably they're very close to a real. I'm going to say the Russians are favorably inclined, right?
If the
So
Russians don't rebuke you right away, that's a good sign.
yeah,
So,
I
like,
mean,
for
I would.
example,
It's not exactly like okay, it's an agreement, but it's kind of like not saying no
right,
is
which is
almost
a
an agreement.
which is for the by Russian standards, and I'll tell you from from my bosses, even when I know that I was on air and I did something like I was super proud of, and mind you, I have like Asian kid guilt where I always think like that I could have done better. I could have done better. But so occasionally when I felt like I did good, I'd step off, the set and I'd tell my boss like, "Hey, did you like blah blah blah?" And he would say, it was acceptable."
Oh, that's high praise.
That was and I went,
That's like
"Thank
that's like
you."
that's totally like raising the roof. Woo woo.
Yes. So when
Yeah.
I got that was acceptable. I I thought, pat my own
Yeah,
back.
or if the
All
Russians are
right.
just like, "Hmm, that's okay too. All
Right.
right.
That's just okay.
All right. So then JD the problem he said was Zelensky. I thought it might be easier to deal with Zelensky than Putin, he said. So far, it's harder. I can't say that's surprising. JD Vance says the US will walk away from the peace process if both Ukraine and Russia refuse to accept the US terms. But really, he was talking about Zelensky. We've issued a very explicit proposal to both the Russians and the Ukrainians. It's time for them to either say yes or for the US to walk away from this process, Vance said. The only way to really stop the killing is for the armies to both put down their weapons, to freeze this thing, and get on with the business of actually building a better Russia and a better Ukraine. I don't really know what he means by building a better Russia and a better Ukraine, but okay, whatever. It was not clear whether the US announcements were part of a pressure campaign to force Zelensky to make territorial concessions, or whether they're trying to create a pretext for abandoning American support for Ukraine. You know, it's very clear to me what Trump wants here. He doesn't need a pretext. He's like saying, look, we're going to come in here. We're going to try to settle this thing. If we can't settle this thing, primarily because our Ukrainian allies are being a pain in the ass, fine, fuck them. They can go back to fighting and they'll beg the Europeans, right? That's where they're at. The
Right.
Europeans,
Fight with
by the
your
way,
sticks and stones then.
yeah, the Europeans who have been promising more military and economic support for Zelensky to make up for what the US is no longer sending have charged that Trump is essentially switching sides in the war and that his real goal is to cast Ukraine aside and find a way to normalize American relations with Moscow. That's bullshit. He wants to end the war for sure.
Right.
He would love that because he wants Trump Tower Kiev as well as Trump Tower
Sure.
Moscow. Trump and his
Yeah.
top aides have already
Crimea.
begun discussing. Yeah, have already begun discussing the prospect of lifting sanctions against Russia and making energy and mineral deals with Putin. So I do think that if Zelensky makes it impossible to end the war the right way, that I think talks will continue between Trump and Putin. There probably will be a summit meeting, and then they'll still move. I think normalized relations are going to happen regardless.
Witkoff is going to Moscow now. He's like, fuck going to London, fuck talking to the Europeans. I'm going where the actual deal is going to get done. I'm going to go to Moscow. And that's what we're looking at right here.
Yeah.
Like that's just the plain
so there's
fact.
There will be normalized relations. I think either way.
I think so.
I mean, look, Zelensky's not the only game in town. He is a dictator, but he does have internal political concerns. And I don't know.
Don't you think? I don't know if Zelensky is high off his own farts right now at this point in life, where he's just like, I'm a godlike, I'm a demigod at this point. But has he not looked at all the other useful idiots throughout history that America has used and then deposed and then killed?
I know.
Like, seriously,
Saddam.
has he not? Right. Like, have 20th century, just don't go that far back in history. Just look from the 1970s. Just look.
Yeah.
Anytime you collude with the US to do whatever war, whatever proxy fight it is, whether it's a full-on, full-on war or just some sort of insurgency, if you collude with the Americans and take in their arms and take in their money, it's just a matter of time before
they fuck you.
They're done with you. You were the useful idiot, and then they turn on you and you're Gonzo, baby.
True.
Deadzo.
Yeah. Muammar Gaddafi, call your office.
Yeah.
All right. So that's that. We'll see what happens. I'm optimistic about improved ads relations between Russia and the U.S. But and I think, I don't know, I hope Zelensky comes around, because honestly, it would be good to end the war. Okay, the White House has been hearing out a chorus of ideas in recent weeks, and I'm glad we're talking about this, for trying to convince Americans to get married and have more kids. This is all part of the Trump administration's new cultural agenda, pushed by its right-wing allies to try to reverse declining birth rates and push conservative family values. One proposal shared with aides would reserve 30% of Fulbright scholarships for applicants who are married or have kids. That makes me uncomfortable. Others would give $5,000 baby bonus to every American mother after delivery. Do they know how much it costs to have kids? $50,000 would be a joke. $5,000. What a tip! What is that? A tip? A third proposal calls on the government to fund programs that educate women.
Someone that clearly it was accidental.
I think if it's accidental, there's not much you can do. I mean, look at it. I'm sure there's plenty they can do. I don't think they should. I mean, look, if I hate to say it, but like, let's say, I'm out camping. I mean, I am very careful when I camp about making sure my fire's out when I leave. I was a Boy Scout. I was trained to do it. And I went on camping trips with my son, who was also a Boy Scout. So, I'm aware of it. But look, a lot of people, like you say, they're doofuses, or in the Latin plural, doofi. And, I worry that, like, those people, it's kind of like, really, it's like, you don't send a guy to jail for that. I mean, it's stupid.
Right. I don't think this is.
But if it's intentional, that's intentional. You can go to jail for a long time, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I think this guy just was an idiot lighting a bonfire in the woods out back, and
intent matters. I mean, it really does. I mean,
and he just failed to put it out, and now it's affecting air quality on the upper East Coast. So that's fun. Now we got to hold on 1 second, because I gotta check with producer Robbie here. Robbie, yesterday's feed is what's showing up in Rumble, because I thought I was tripping. But yeah, so I'm not sure if we're having a weird technical difficulty, but before we bring in our guest, I want to make sure we have that straightened out.
I'm watching on Rumble right now, and it's looking correct.
And other viewers are saying it's yesterday's feed also.
I'm looking right now, and
okay, now it is. That was weird. Okay, so that's all straightened out. Okay, so there was demonic possession of my Rumble feed for a moment.
Okay, all right, all fixed.
It was not good. Okay, all fixed. Whatever it was. Producer Robbie says had to reboot. That's what it was. So there was something.
It's always about that. Always.
We are trying to work through. So you guys know that we are trying different software, different programs, to recast the feed, especially since we occasionally have to drop out of YouTube if we're saying things that are a little too spicy for the YouTube censors. And we never know what it's going to be. So, we're trying new things. So apologies if that happens. So, all right, I'm going to go ahead and hit the jaws, and Ted will bring in our guest here, because we got stuff to talk about, man.
Let's do it.
I'm not getting up at 4:00 in the morning. That's all I can say. I mean, to pay my respects, I get it. But
you can always watch it on feed if you care later.
All right, let's hit the jaws.
Catholic world is getting ready for the funeral of Pope Francis tomorrow. It begins at 10 o'clock in the morning Roman time, 4 o'clock Eastern, and 1 a.m. Pacific time. Certain high-profile attendees may also have other things on their minds. A bunch of world leaders will be attending to pay respects, but they could also find themselves involved in other things. Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni, of course, obviously will be there. She's the host country, basically. I mean, the Vatican is a country, but kind of like a sliver of a country. And many of her fellow Western leaders will attend, including French President Emmanuel Macron, German Chancellor Olaf Scholz, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, never to miss any photo op, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer, and U.S. President Donald Trump, also not one to miss any photo opportunities. Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos II, who leads the most Catholic country in Asia, will also be there. Argentine President Javier Milei, former adversary of Pope Francis, but also a fellow Argentine, and Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva will be there as well. Trump seems to be a major object of interest for other world leaders. Zelensky said he'd like to talk in a little side meeting to Trump. Gee, I wonder what he would have to, he'd be asking about. Maybe, he's
seems inappropriate.
He's asking for some kind of recipe for Melania for something.
Yes.
And EU Commission President Ursula von der Leyen might also get to meet Trump for the first time since he began his second term. If Maloney gets his way, he wants that to happen. There's not going to be, this is going to be a hit it and quit it meeting. Trump is only going to be in Rome under 24 hours. He never likes to spend much time anywhere away from Mar-a-Lago, or I mean, even away in the United States. He'll go to a rally in another part of the country, get back on the plane, and dip. So joining us to discuss the future of the Catholic Church and the prospects for who might be considered to replace Pope Francis is Timothy J. Gordon. He's a Catholic philosopher, author, and podcaster. His show is called Rules for Retrogrades. It's on YouTube and anywhere else where podcasts are syndicated. His latest book is The Case for Patriarchy, and that is out now. Timothy, thanks so much for joining us here on the TMI Show.
Thanks for having me here on TMI. Great to be here.
Good to have you. So let's talk about the process a little bit. The process for at this stage is that after the funeral, the cardinals will meet to plan their papal conclave and talk about general issues in the church, which obviously there's going to be some overlap. There's a Venn diagram there about, the church faces this issue and that issue, and obviously which pope, which cardinal might be a good person to deal with those issues. You need at least 80 eligible cardinals to form a conclave to have. You need a maximum of 120. They get together in the Sistine Chapel underneath those very famous, Michelangelo paintings. Then there's all the cardinals swear not to say. They swear confidentiality. They're secluded. They're not allowed to talk to anybody. No cell phones, presumably. They have 2 ballots each morning, 2 ballots in the afternoon until they achieve a winner. And sometimes it's pretty quick. Sometimes it's not. You need a 2/3 majority. Once you have a 2/3 majority, that's done. Each cardinal writes the name of the person that they're voting for. There's all sorts of like little side conferences as people make the case for this person or that person. They fold their paper ballot, drop it into an urn, then someone counts them up. And so every time that there's a vote, the results are announced with white smoke or black smoke. Black smoke means we're short of 2/3. White smoke means we have an election. But then that's not really it completely. The candidate still has to accept if willing, although in recent decades, they always kind of have accepted. The most reluctant was Benedict in recent years. He was kind of like, I think I'm too old to do this. And that proved to be true. And then ultimately, Habemus Papam, which is Church Latin for we have a Pope, is declared from the balcony of St. Peter's. And the new pope is brought out and introduced to a massive crowd of tens of thousands of people. And then the new pope celebrates the mass and that pontificate begins. So that's the process. We have, according to news events, we have news reports. The top contender is Pietro Parolin. He's Italian. He's the Secretary of State of the Vatican. He's 70 years old.
Hold on, Ted. Let's let Tim weigh in here on who he thinks the top contenders are. And fill us in if we got the process wrong, if we missed anything. As we're looking right here at live images of people paying their last respects to Pope Francis, and of course we'll get into his legacy and everything a little bit later on.
Yeah, the most important thing I think going forward is usually determining papabilissimi, the most popable candidate of all, is really, really difficult because it's not quite like electoral politics that we're used to in the West. There's often, sometimes, as in the case of the 2005 conclave, Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger was the presumptive candidate. He'd been the doctrinal number 2 under John Paul II for 25 years. And especially his enemies, but also his friends, knew that he was the presumptive candidate. Other times, though, as in 2013, only some of the cardinals themselves know who they really want to go for, and it's a secret. In 2013, for instance, at that conclave, which gave us Pope Francis, this little-known Bergoglio, it turns out, had actually been, though this wasn't disclosed to the public, had been the number 2 candidate in the 2005 conclave. But most people in even the knowledgeable Catholic public had never heard of Bergoglio's name. He wasn't on any of the, he might have been very, very low on some of the Vegas voting, papabilissimi lists. So a lot of times it's a surprise. Sometimes it's a presumptive candidate. Here, when they say that Cardinal Parolin is, I guess, the majority-minority favorite, that's because he's Cardinal Secretary of State. They're listing him as a moderate, though he's very, very far left of center. And I would say, yeah, it depends which way the Cardinals really want to take it. I did an episode of my show yesterday, and I was trying to explain that this conclave here in 2025 will be determinative of something that Catholics have been trying to find out for 6 decades now, which is this: Vatican II being the complete catastrophe that it was, and the auto demolition mode of the church, as even Pope Paul VI called it. Are these cardinals, the men leading the churches directly underneath the Pope, and the archbishops as well, for that matter, are they evil, or are they just super incompetent? And have they been, in that vein, elevated and they're kind of dunderheads? Because the church has been in auto demolition mode. This conclave will tell us what we've been wanting to know for the last 60 years and 3 or 4 popes, because Francis was so extreme that the word has been, ever since the wiretappings in the Vatican began around 2017, 2018, and Francis really lost his popularity and his false image as nice guy Pope. He's running essentially a police state over in the Vatican for the last 7 years. Even the leftist cardinals whom he made at those 12 consistories, he had more consistories of cardinals than any recent pope. He made a lot of leftists, hopefully to be in his image. Even they were tiring of his autocratic ways. He's the exact opposite of the way that the popular media had portrayed him for the first 5 or 6 years of the pontificate. So will it be Parolin? I don't know. I mean, you can throw him out, but Cardinal Timothy Dolan the other day gave a talk on MSNBC, and he was saying he really wanted someone with maybe the heart of Francis, but the doctrinal mind, defending tradition of Benedict XVI, and with the determination and fearsomeness of John Paul II. The takeaway here is that if a center leftist, like even Cardinal Dolan, is now tired enough to represent the other leftists of Francis's anti-doctrinal subversiveness, then maybe we'll actually, maybe we're in position to hope for someone like a Cardinal Sarah, or dare I say, a Cardinal Burke or a Cardinal Mueller. But time will tell. We can go through some of those guys' CVs if you want. It really will tell us, though, philosophically, have the sort of hapless leftist cardinals, for the first time in 60 years in the post-conciliar era, finally seen that the culmination of the spirit of Vatican II, the leftism, the progressivism, the modernism, which did culminate with Francis, has it run its course? Do we need to invariably turn back to the right?
Well, so Tim, is it the even if it was fake, is it the was it the popularity of Pope Francis, you think, that drove more people back to Catholicism than before? Because there had been a long dip of people leaving the church, leaving the faith, and then we saw during his tenure that there was a sudden rise. Or are these people coming in and actually looking for a more traditional John Paul II type church? I mean, what was it? Because we did see a new rise in Catholicism in recent years.
Yeah, that rise began in 2019, 2020, 2021, and it actually evidences quite the opposite. Not a because of Francis's goodness draw or appeal to the church, but rather a sort of post-Francis draw or appeal to true traditionalism. And one of the mistakes we can make is to associate traditionalism with John Paul II. He's one of the guys that really helped enthusiastically kill the true mass, the Tridentine Latin Mass. What the numbers show is that the current reawakening that's happening in America with our leaders, sports stars, Hollywood stars, and diocese to diocese, just common people, we are seeing record numbers of converts, especially this Easter. It's people wanting to connect with the Tridentine Latin Mass, the true Mass of the Latin Rite, for the better part of 2 millennia that the radicals really tried to kill, starting in 1970, following upon the close of Vatican II in 1965. People are coming into the church and they want to go to Latin Mass. Francis had, through the second half of his pontificate, declared war on the Latin Mass in summer of 2020. He promulgated the document called Traditionis Custodes, where he's thumbing the eye of the people that come into the Latin Mass, because boomers and greatest gen era Catholics are really the ones that hated it. They declared ex cathedra, if you will, that young people could never like this old stodgy Latin Mass, and they came up with this really corny sort of Beatles, Monkees music, Novus Ordo Mass that most of us grew up with in the 70s and 80s and 90s. And it's terrible, and it drove people away from the faith. There's an old saying in the church that goes back almost 2,000 years, lex orandi, lex credendi, which means the way that you pray is the way that you believe. So when we have these clown masses with altar girls and without an altar, they stripped most of the altars out of the churches. They gave us Protestant Cranmer tables. They turned the priest around so he's facing the congregation when he consecrates the Eucharist. All this silly stuff that does not go back to the apostles the way the Latin Mass does. People stop believing. And that's what Vatican caused.
Let me ask you, I mean, so I don't want to get too deep in the weeds here, but, so I've attended churches where they offered Latin Mass, and certainly, it was on offer. You say everybody wanted the Latin Mass, but I mean, the numbers show, I mean, in most American parishes where Latin Mass is an option, it's not the majority. It's far from the majority attendance, right? More people go to the English language. I mean, I think the argument against the Latin Mass is that, like, people don't, I took 4 years of Latin. I like Latin, but I mean, and I think the Latin Mass is cool and it should be offered, but I don't understand, but I do take the point of people who don't speak Latin, and if they're just saying words and syllables, they're pronouncing syllables, they don't know their meaning. I mean, is that truly worship if you don't understand what you're saying?
Absolutely. It's the ecclesiastical Latin is the language of the church. We're not really supposed to have Mass said in the vernacular. What you're referring to, because it's been outlawed essentially again since 2020, is the Novus Ordo in Latin, which is very corny. What really matters is going back to the old missal, which means the old liturgical forms that's associated with, of course, before Latin II, the Mass wasn't said in the vernacular. This is preposterous. You use the language of the church, And the prayers are as obvious. People grew up and knew the prayers of the Mass.
Yeah, my mom was one of them.
By
Yeah.
second grade, so you don't by any means have to speak it. But yeah, you're talking about saying the Novus Ordo in Latin, which is absurd. Now, I'm talking about the form of the missal, which was, whether we're talking about the 1960 missal or the ones before that, even, that have been moderately changed ever since the Council of Trent. That's really what matters, is the old Mass, which is beautiful. And no, the numbers don't show that at all. Francis issued several documents in 18, 19, 20, where he was questioning, why are all the young people in America, France, and even in Italy, why are all of the young people attending the TLMs where they're offered? His predecessor, Benedict XVI, in 2007, had circulated a document called Summorum Pontificum, which made the Latin Mass sayable again. I mean, the Tridentine form, not the Latin Mass not saying the Novus Ordo, the new Mass in Latin. That's corny. No one wants to go to that. And after 2007, until Francis had to essentially block it, which broke Benedict's heart. He was still alive at the time that Francis was talking about undoing Summorum Pontificum. People were converting in droves. So all the numbers show that the tradition is really what young people were connecting with. I used to go to the Latin Mass in Orange County, California, in Los Angeles, in the Valley. We go to one now that's still on offer in New Orleans, and it's just full of young families, 7, 8, 9, 10 kids, to 30-year-old couples having families. You go to the Novus Ordo, and it's just some corny boomers, with their 1.7 kids and their wannabe Beatles music and their Cranmer tables, and it's dying, it's dead. And Francis and those like him are bitter about this because they really thought they had. Maybe it was in good faith, maybe it was in bad faith. They thought they had the solutions. They thought modernism was it. They thought changing with the world was it. Let's have this sort of crappy wannabe Protestantism, and it failed. It died. And now, the original rationale for making the change, it will bring more people in. Well, numbers just plummeted after Vatican II. In the 70s, Pope Paul VI released the new missal in December of 69, and immediately in the next 6 months, Mass attendance drops off violently. Also, belief in the real presence of the Eucharist, that little consecrated host being Christ's body, blood, soul, and divinity, the whole center of Christianity and Roman Catholic faith, dropped off to only between 10 and 20 people, depending on the survey, believe in it because of the new Mass. So it's really, really important. This is not just about the language. This is about the missal and the liturgical forms that are happening. Is the priest facing the people, or is he facing where he's supposed to be? He's supposed to turn his back on the people as he consecrates those. Things like that are really, really important. And it seems they knew what they were doing at Vatican II. And this is important today and this week and next week, because I'm arguing Francis made what happened at the council between 1962 and 1965 undeniable. It was undeniably bad. He was the apotheosis of the spirit of Vatican II. And now even center-left cardinals are saying, I guess we need to go back to true tradition, for much further than John Paul II, who was really a big fan of the council. He was kind of a conservative modernist. We need to actually go back. What this conclave is going to tell us is this hot air? Is it more bluster? Are they trying to still run interference for keeping the failed program of Vatican II going? Or do we actually need to go back to real Catholicism?
So, I mean, my general take has been that liberal popes tend to increase membership, church participation in the global South, and whereas conservative popes are better tend to increase membership in Europe and in the United States, in the West, and kind of like the secularization is the big challenge, right, for the Catholic Church and for Christianity writ large. And society is just becoming more secular, and there isn't a magic bullet, right? It's not choosing the right. It's not like there is a pope who can solve this problem. Correct me if you think I'm wrong, but if I am right, what is the answer? to growing the church as opposed to trying to just staunch the bleeding.
With all due respect, I do think you're wrong. There are several, say, premises of normism informing your assumptions there. So it's difficult to address 3 or 4 at once. But when you say the global South, for instance, if we take the first synod operated under Francis, the Extraordinary Family Synod in October of 2014, the Ordinary Synod of Francis in October of 2015, they're twin synods, his first ones. This is where Francis wanted to do that thing that the group of subversives called the St. Gallen Mafia had put him there to do. Four things. The first thing was to give communion to adulterers, divorced and civilly remarried. And he accomplished that there between the October 2014 and October 2015 synod. Well, it was correctly, widely held that it was the African bishops at those 2 synods that saved the church, that made it impossible for Francis and the Europeans to do what they wanted to do, led by Cardinal Sarah and other heroes in the African church. These guys still don't have girl altar boys, which is a preposterous thing. And the girl altar boys is just readying the way for female priests, which is also what this St. Gallen Mafia wants to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's one example. No, it's actually the global South. If you count Africa and certain parts of Asia, the Philippines, that are really, really faithful. They just want tradition. They don't understand the kind of change that's coming from the West. But even in the West, I'm citing it's really the people, what they actually want, if we're assessing this as vox populi. Young people want tradition as well. Everyone does, because it's truth. It's people want religion to be religion. They don't want religion to act like some surrogate for a moralistic therapeutic deism. That's failed, that project in the West. So whether we're talking about the leadership in the global South is very traditional and wants tradition, the lay in the West and all over the world wants tradition. They want religion to be religion. When you get a hamburger, you want it to be a hamburger. You don't want it to be made of vegetables or something that's gross. The only people in the West that are really pushing this false agenda, and to be fair, the false narrative that you're repeating, religion should act like a rock concert, man, are the European leaders of the church, and it's just a sort of group within a group. The Rahnerites were the people, Karl Rahner and his followers. They usually come from Germany in the northern parts of Europe, archbishops there. They push this false agenda. Oh, young people want monkeys music at Mass, man. No, we grew up making fun of that. So I'd say it's a universal drive that people want a thing to be what it is. That's just called truth. And young people want this in the West, and people in Africa actually have good leaders like Cardinal Sarah, who I hope is our future Pope.
Would he be the first Black leader of the church?
Yeah, we've had other Africans, but they were more like Elon Musk, that kind of African. Yeah, no, he would be the first Black Pope. That we've had lots of Black archbishops and cardinals, but and there have been popes that were called Black, but they were not Black in the sense that you and I mean it. So, hey, it's the era of diversity, equity, inclusion.
That's true.
Yes. Why not Cardinal Sarah?
Well, I thought we're undoing that now in the U.S. So but yeah, with Cardinal Sarah literally being African Black African, not Elon Musk.
Really
African.
Black. He's like super Black.
Yeah, he's not Elon Musk African, which is technically true, whether people realize it or not. Elon Musk is originally from South Africa. He technically is an African American. So for anybody out there, let me dispel that right now that we're, playing cute with race. Elon Musk literally is an African American. He is obviously white South African, but he's African American. But anyway, Cardinal Sarah is a dark-skinned man, and he would be, as like you said, the first Black Pope, first.
What are his chances?
Is that a good thing, Tim?
Well,
for this kind of representation?
I think it's good because he's a champion of tradition. There's a really good website you can go to. My publisher helps to put it out, Sophia Institute Press, where it lines up the most papally 21 cardinals in the College of Cardinals. And they just have 10 issues in the, I guess, y-axis. And their checks are X's, kind of like you would want for a congressional voting block. You just want to see this guy's voting record. And there are only 3 guys that have X's all the way across. And these guys are American Cardinal Burke, the primary opponent of the Francis pontificate. He was once the number 3 in the church, the modern day equivalent of the Grand Inquisitor.
Wasn't he like a rabble rouser, as Francis would have referred to him?
Well, he's one of the dubia cardinals. He's a very, very prayerful man. And he was always respectful in his speech against Pope Francis. But he, together with Cardinal Sarah, they were 2 of the 5 dubia cardinals who had raised this formal dubia process where they just respectfully asked Pope Francis, how are you saying 2 and 2 equals 5 here with the 2016 document Amoris Laetitia? How are you proposing to give communion to divorcees who are remarried? Because if you're remarried, that's adultery. You can't go to confession for it. It's kind of simple. If you're divorced, that's a one-time sin. If you're not remarried, you can go to confession and then you can go back to communion and receive the sacrament. But this is a major question. How can an unrepentant adulterer go and make a valid confession? They can't. So they've been barred from communion for 2,000 years. This is why if you get divorced, stay divorced, don't get remarried, Catholics. But so they asked this series of 5 questions called the dubia process. It's very old. Francis was enraged. This is really what I referred to earlier when the mask came off. This was happening between 2016 and 2018. He was just enraged at one point at dinner, or right after this, all of this had gone down, where he'd received the dubia from Cardinals Sarah and Cardinal Burke. He passed out for 9 minutes at dinner. They thought he was dead. He was red in the face. He said, "I'll have their hats." Cardinal Burke had been the prefect for the Apostolic Signatura, the High Court. He was the Grand Inquisitor. He didn't take his red hat. He remained a cardinal, but he demoted him from that position. Cardinal Sarah was the prefect for the Congregation of Divine Worship. He got rid of him, demoted him. So these are 2 of the 3 best cardinals who are technically papabile. Burke is especially probably disfavored, as he's seen as the leader of the rabble rousers, as you call them. So yes, you're correct there. But Sarah is they're both prayerful, holy men. They're probably the 2 holiest men in the College of Cardinals. But Sarah is seen as, he said even less. He just signed the dubia. And I think there's more hope for him. The problem is they're both old. And we need a good, true traditionalist for the first time since the Second Vatican Council. We were told Benedict XVI, he had some love for the Latin Mass, but he was still kind of a modernist in a lot of ways that aren't typically recognized. We need a true traditionalist, and we need a young one, which shouldn't be that hard to do. The hard part is going to be getting any of these guys the job, and we don't know how likely that is. But I hope for Cardinal Sarah. I hope against hope.
Yeah, I pulled up the website that you mentioned here. It's on screen. What about the Filipino Cardinal Tagle?
Tagle, yeah. Tagle is he was sort of made in the image of Pope Francis. He's seen as a strong leftist. He has the site lists him as sort of a moderate leftist, but he's a strong leftist. He's sort of Asian Pope Francis. He'd be really bad news, which is not representative of the Philippines, because, like one of you guys said, the Philippines is typically quite faithful.
Very Catholic. They don't allow divorce in their country. It's still outlawed.
Oh, no, very based.
I'm wondering though. Look, a more conservative church is going to be a smaller church, right? In the United States, for example, 28% of Catholics are divorced. So if you say, well, you guys have to never have love again in the rest of your life, or you're going to be excommunicated. And look, cards on the table. That was my mom. My mom got divorced and in the early 60s. And then she was briefly excommunicated for a few years. She was extremely devout. It was extremely upsetting to her. She didn't want to get divorced, but ultimately, she never remarried. But ultimately, she was, due to Vatican II, she was readmitted, and she was devout the rest of her life. I guess the point is, I mean, if we don't have statistics for global Catholics for the divorce rate, but if you lose 28% of American Catholics, or let's say half of them get remarried and 14% are just gone because they're adulterers, then, the church is going to be, is it okay with you if the church is just more conservative but smaller?
Well, let's frame this properly. Jesus said in 2 of the 4 Gospels, that 2 of them were synoptic Gospels, if you divorce your wife and you remarry another, you're committing adultery, right? So he said this. So it sounds like you might think Jesus is wrong. I don't. He also said to the apostles,
I just think Jesus lived 2,000 years ago.
When you go to one town and you bring the gospel, if the people don't hear you, shake the dust from your sandal and go to the next town. You don't modify the gospel to accommodate murderers, whores, adulterers, thieves, right? You bring the gospel to them and you say, here it is. This is it. This is the truth. This is your way out of jail. This is your get out of jail free card. So what the church declares as a matter of just truth, simple, straightforward truth, is that once you get married, if it's a valid marriage, maybe we can talk about annulment in a second. Right. But if it was a valid marriage, it doesn't matter, that you have a crush on the Time to Make the Donuts guy on TV, and now you want to get married to him.
What if your spouse is beating you?
Absolutely set.
But what if your spouse beats you?
If you want to find love again, you have love, right? You go back to your husband or wife, you live with them, and it's also a misconception. No one's ever been excommunicated for divorce. That simply doesn't happen. Yeah, then Vatican II didn't correct that. Because that never happened.
My mom got married outside of the church, so she married a Protestant, and then so I think they excommunicated her for that. And then
you don't get excommunicated for marrying a Protestant. It's just that's
what she told me. I don't know. I was like, a little kid, a wee one. But I mean,
like everyone's parents also. I mean, it's everyone's parents, everyone's grandparents from that era did so. But to get back to your question, you bring the true gospel. There's a million false iterations of the true gospel that's called by St. Paul in the Bible itself, the false gospel. So the main thing is you bring the true gospel to as many people want it. And young people nowadays are crying out for it. And like I said, just Francis and those like him were absolutely angry that their kind of normie narrative, the one you're sort of reiterating here, it's not true. People,
by the way, I'm totally stealing that for other political stuff. I like that normieism. I do have to say, though, I mean, the thing about Catholicism, one of the things that makes it unique and sets it aside from, say, Islam after the end of the Caliphate, is that it has a governing political body that adjudicates and can modernize the church and has made it more adaptable. And one of the reasons that it's been successful for 2,000 years, if we're going to be frozen in time to Christ's time 2,000 years ago, do we need a church at all, right? I mean, maybe we can just say we just go with OG gospel. We follow that literally. We don't need bishops, cardinals, collection plate, the whole 9 yards. It just seems like, what is the purpose of this, of the Vatican, of the governing hierarchy of the church, which is basically like a country? If you're not going to modernize,
if it were a country,
are you suggesting?
If it were a country, guys, it would be right up there with like China and India in terms of population. We're talking about 1.3 billion people that identify in the world as
kind of
Catholic.
Used to be a country.
It literally could be one of the biggest countries in the world if you count the Catholic diaspora around the world, right? Mm-hmm. and one of the biggest landowners of property all around the world, as the Roman Catholic Church goes, right? We're talking about a very powerful and very far-reaching institution.
A political entity.
But you seem to be suggesting, when you refer to the OG gospel and the purpose of the church's magisterium to adapt it with the times. This is exactly the opposite of the purpose of the Holy Magisterium, is to preserve something called the depositum fide, the deposit of faith, which is together. Scripture needs to remain untouched, and the capital T tradition, the church's teaching that came down directly from the apostles to the patristic teachers in the first 350 years of the church, to preserve it so it wouldn't change. So you're talking about something.
Well, they're not doing a very good job, because it's been changing for thousands
and it
of
needs
years.
to be adapted and amended. This is absolutely wrong. The purpose of the magisterium, if you go home and get your Denzinger, I'm sure you have a copy. The whole purpose of all of this in Denzinger and all of the papal teachings on Scripture is to enliven them and to give the proper interpretation that doesn't change through time. So when you talk about the OG gospel, let's go back to Jesus saying, once for all, he's speaking both as a precept of the eternal law and the natural law, meaning this can never change. Once you take a wife or a husband in the view of heaven, that's set. And I know that's unpopular, and people want to go marry their new crushes or whatever, second, third, fourth.
Or they want to leave their abusive spouse.
And we have Protestantism for that. You can go to any church. That's why you have English Protestantism. If you want to contradict the truth, and you want someone to tell you that this shit is shinola or whatever, then you go be a Protestant. But if you want the truth and you want to say, hey, I know, your husband got a little bit tubby. I understand your wife got a little bit.
That's not what it is.
You got to go back to your spouse, though, man. That's Catholicism. It's the value, the beauty of truth. Protestantism's for telling people shit is shinola.
I'm divorced. I didn't want to be. I hate it. I wanted, my wife was abusive. What can I say? And she was abusing our son. I'm not going back to her. Sorry.
Yeah, we're just talking about Catholicism here. We're just rapping.
Yeah, no, we are just rapping. I know. I'm just saying, like, it's. But
just
it's like
married,
I do think it's like.
Like I said, you're good if you're Catholic. You can be divorced. You could be separated, particularly if you're in an abusive situation. You just can't get remarried. Right? I mean, that's really not Catholicism. Simpliciter. That's just what Jesus says in Matthew's gospel. He says, if you divorce your wife and you take another, that's adultery. So even sola scriptura Protestants, when they're being honest, they acknowledge as much. So, and that's the beauty of truth, is that it's unchanging. Well, it doesn't change from generation to generation.
So Manila's been putting up all the history of the church in like shorthand in our background. I'm sure you see it on the screen here, and like you just look at that and you're like, there's the history. It's changing. The Catholic Church has been an ever-evolving, changing institution, responding to massive political changes, cultural changes, shifts in society, and not just in the past 100 years, right? Over the course of its entire history, the Catholic Church.
You're talking about the personnel. When we look, the bishops of the church, they don't live forever. So what you're saying is an absurdism. That because the bishops die, and each bishop of every diocese and archdiocese stands in the shoes of one of the apostles. We can tell you where they are. The bishops live about 75 years, because that's what a man's average life expectancy is. Sure. Because he's replaced by a new bishop who stands in the same shoes that he did. The Bishop of Rome stands in the shoes of Peter. That doesn't mean that the church's irreformable dogma changes. The whole point of having these guys, which you've squarely missed, is that they are the protectors, the traditionis custodes, the Francis's turn of phrase that's supposed to be ironic, the guardians of tradition. It's not allowed to change. So irreformable doctrine is the purpose of it all, the deposit of faith. You've completely missed it. The church doesn't change. The personnel change. Maybe the buildings do, but you thought, and a lot of people were fooled by this modernist lie, that because the paint chips off on a new building and they have to do a new paint job or something, that the irreformable doctrine can be overturned. Oh, now, modern day Jesus would say divorce is okay. No, it's irreformable if it's a dogma. And that's why we have the difference between changing discipline, like priests don't necessarily have to wear their hair in the tonsure anymore. That's called a discipline. And irreformable doctrine, the teachings of the church cannot be reformed. And that's the whole point. That's the whole point of having a church. It's literally what Christ said to the apostles at the Last Supper. What you bind here on earth is bound, and what you loose here on earth is loosed. He's not only telling them that they can hear confessions, he's telling them, I've brought you the truth, capital T, and it's not allowed to change. The Holy Spirit, this is when he announced the Holy Spirit was at the Last Supper. He's going to be here to oversee you, to make sure that you don't make errors. So it's an inerrant tradition and inerrant scripture. Together they make the deposit of faith. And that's the whole point of having conclaves and popes and archbishops and bishops, is they're just there to make sure that it doesn't change, even if the men and the buildings and the hairstyles do.
Yeah. I mean, take yourself, for example. You're a young guy, you got this cool hip rocker look, but it really betrays, your values as like a very serious Catholic and philosopher, and what, people would think, you would be one of these rock and roll, like, let's play some music in church. That's not, a homily of any sort, right? Like, that's what they would think when they're looking at you, but really you're sticking true to the dogma, and your core values are your core values. And I think that's kind of what you're saying here, right? I mean, don't be fooled by the packaging.
Absolutely. I mean, the church is there for life. I mean, everything's true there except for the fact that I'm young. I wish you were right about that. I mean, I'm 44, but the people.
Tim, we are young. Stop it. How dare you?
Fine. We'll go with one more palliable lie. Yeah, 44 is very young. Sure. I wish I were 34, but the point is,
we're half the age of Francis.
If you look at the average age, size of family of people entering the church now versus the 80s and 90s when we were growing up, it's huge. It's humongous. And I'm a good example because Francis said he's getting rid of the Latin Mass, to go back to that, because he doesn't want us to be bi-ritual. A lot of people don't know this, but we have 21 different rites in the church. And those rites, the Roman rites, 99% of the masses that we know, everything we're arguing about is the Roman rite. But there are all these minor rites that were allowed to keep certain groups from leaving the church in, like, the Great Western Schism. The point is, young people, real young people, not people like me, but they actually really, really, really connect with the traditions, not just the old Mass, but the traditions that go along with it. And the traditions of, it's a moral imperative, not contracepting, staying married, having big families. This is what the laity are called to do, 10, 11, 12, 13 kids. I don't see that, because I live about an hour and a half away from New Orleans. When I go to the Novus Ordo Mass, 90 seconds from my front door here in South Mississippi, because I don't have a TLM closer than New Orleans.
That's a beautiful church there in the French Quarter, by the way.
Beautiful. Yeah, St. Pat's is 200 years old. But I see the typical boomer families with 1.7 kids. They contracepted for 40 years, which contradicts the entire point of the lay vocation, is to have big families. They're kind of just there clapping along, listening to their crappy Beatles music, and they're tuned out, and they don't know shit about the faith. They don't know anything. You could literally start doing, you could start doing like a Buddhist chant in the middle of Mass, and they wouldn't know the difference because, one, they don't know shit, and because, two, the priests give them shit every week at Mass. They wouldn't know the difference. When I go once a month to the TLM in New Orleans, it's families with 8, 9, 10, 11, 12 kids. They know the Latin, they know everything there, and they're very engaged, and they're chanting the Pange Lingua, written by Thomas himself, and it's in this big, beautiful church with, oh my gosh, with an altar. They actually stripped all the altars out of these Novus Ordo churches. It's just such a stark difference. And if I could take you two to mass with me at my Novus Ordo one week, and then take you to New Orleans' beautiful old church, St. Pat's, over 200 years old, right near the quarter, like you said. The next week, you would see that this is not a matter of taste. It's another solecism of modernism, just an error. Beauty is not in the eye of the beholder. It's very objective. Anyone with half a brain would want the latter. And no one could possibly want this form of non-worship worship. It's not worship. You just go and everyone's dead-eyed suburbanites and boomers, and everyone's been married 3 times and no one believes in the gospel. And the Eucharist, the body of our Lord himself, body, blood, soul, divinity, is handled like a turd, and women are passing it out at the altars, not the priests. And people are handling it with their dirty hands, and they ripped out the altar rail. It's just shit. And everyone's sick of it. And young people are like, just give me the real thing, man. Do you like new Coke or do you like old Coke? It's an obvious choice. It's not a matter of taste. It's objective. People want, if they're going to be Christian, they want the real deal.
Well, I mean, but we didn't. I would like, before we're running low on time, and thank you so much for coming on. Yeah. I do want to get your answer though to the practical concern of, which I think is valid. If you're worshiping and listening to a service in a language that you don't speak, you don't understand, then are you spiritually present to receive God's message and are you really there? Is it like, Catholicism recognizes that, yes, you're baptized as a baby, but you're not really a full-fledged, you can't take communion until you're confirmed, and you're confirmed at the age of reason, where you have free will and you accept God so you're not just inheriting Catholicism from your family. You're making a choice, right, to participate in this ritual, in this religion. It's like, so consciousness is important. Are you conscious fully if you're worshiping in a language that you don't speak or understand?
Yes, you are. And there's another. So I mean, it's true that we used to be confirmed at baptism. Nowadays, I mean, I have 7 kids. 2 of them are going through it right now. They're confirmed around 15, which is too late.
It's getting later and later.
But
yeah.
I was confirmed, I think, at 11.
Confession at the age of reason, which is 2nd grade. So nowadays they get confirmed afterwards. But the rub of it is that I'll reverse the question on you. There's one official language of the church. It's important that it's a dead language in all other respects. Ecclesiastical Latin, which I teach my kids starting when they're in 3rd grade, and they all love it. They go through it, and it's easy enough to learn. But going to Mass, where you're hearing the parts of the Mass in ecclesiastical Latin, and the prayer, which you can teach the most, you can teach a kindergartner, Ave Maria, gratia plena, Dominus tecum. I mean, they know. Well,
someone who speaks a Romance language, but what about a Catholic who speaks Burmese, for example?
You're missing the point, though. Again, it's about the church has a language. So I would say, right, yes, if you're hearing the Mass or you're hearing prayers outside of the language of the church, which is very, very, very easy to catechize, and the church just chose to stop doing this at Vatican II. Are they really present? And I'm friends with the, Pope Donald Trump's sort of chosen exorcist, Father Chad Ripperger, and he says, who deals directly with the devil and demons, and he says outright, he hangs out at Mar-a-Lago all the time. Prayers not in Latin aren't as effective. The demons hate the Latin far more. I mean, you can take it directly from the horse's mouth. The language of the one true church, the one church instituted by Christ and the disciples, was a Latin language church. Ecclesiastical Latin is the official language of the church. Even under Francis's pontificate, the documents are promulgated in Latin, my friend. And so I think your point cuts one way, and the one way favors what I'm saying. If you're praying in Tagalog or English or whatever, then it's not as effective as praying in the direct language of the church, which again is very, very easy to catechize. And I teach my kids at home, and it's really, really very simple matter. Americans struggle with language, and this is just silly. You just start teaching Latin in kindergarten, and the kids will understand it very soon. But you're
Now,
right.
of course, Jesus did not
Language,
speak Latin.
Vernacular,
Right?
It's not as effective.
Jesus didn't speak
surprise
Latin.
you to hear that?
Jesus spoke Greek, right, and Aramaic, and Hebrew.
Spoke Latin and Aramaic, and some people think Greek, but Jesus spoke Latin when he was in Rome. What do you think he was speaking to Pontius Pilate? He was speaking Latin. That doesn't matter. Because of the action of the Holy Spirit, Jesus also didn't institute the exact Mass. He instituted the part of the Mass we associate with the consecration. But the Mass was instituted by the apostles. It's an apostolic tradition.
Yeah, that's right.
And yeah, well, of course. So that has been in Latin since time immemorial. And again, the language isn't even the most important part to me. What's important to people are that the forms go all the way back to something older than just 1969. And that's really what people connect with. And hopefully, I've evidenced it for you in a lot of ways, but you have it from the horse's mouth, Father Chad Ripperger. Like,
I want to do a deep dive on the exorcism. I'm fascinated by exorcisms, actually. So
and
I would love to have you back just to talk about that.
Yeah, that is super fascinating. Yeah, some people might call it the occult, but
it's a legitimate thing in Catholicism.
I know that.
A guy came to speak at my church about it, and he even had a film. It was crazy.
Well, one last thing before we let you go. With the death of Pope Francis, that kind of bumped the canonization of Carlo Acutis. I guess he was a millennial. He was like 15 years old when he died from leukemia. But he was due to be canonized this weekend. What happens there for that kid? It's bumped, so it's suspended for now. When will that happen for Carlo to become Saint Carlo Acutis, now that the Pope's funeral services are taking place this weekend instead?
Presumably it'll happen under, probably in the first weeks of the next pontificate, whatever that is. It's part of immemorial tradition that they do nothing administrative in this interregnum. But he's already been beatified, and he's already been had the second step after beatification associated with canonization confirmed. So we don't have the same process anymore where we have a devil's advocate arguing against proper canonization, but he's already received the marks of canonization. He's already been confirmed as having 2 miracles associated with him. So it's bound to happen. It'll just be under the next pontificate. It's just part of the tradition, I guess, that they don't do anything administrative in between pontificates.
Okay, well that makes sense. I know a lot of people were waiting for that as well.
Yeah,
everything's paused until we see the white smoke. Which how long do you think that's going to take?
I'm really curious. I'm going to be watching really closely. Sorry.
If you had to guess, what would you say? A couple weeks from now? Like, would it take a couple weeks?
I would think this one might be really fast, because everything I'm hearing out of Rome is that even the leftist cardinals were so oppressed by the autocratic Pope Francis that they're all looking for the same thing. This is what Cardinal Timothy Dolan, who's a center leftist Cardinal Archbishop of New York, said the other day. So if it's not bluster, then it should be reasonably fast, and we should see someone that would be favorable to someone like me. And I would hope this would be a very short conclave. We don't know the exact date, do we, that they go into conclave, but it'll probably be late next week or early the week after that. And I wouldn't expect a long conclave. I'm not. If it's bluster and they're all just saying this and they want to give us another Lavender Mafia, Sankt Gallen Mafia type of pope, then it might also be short. Yeah, I'm expecting a short conclave.
Wow.
Either way.
Okay, so a lot of stuff happening and moving within the Catholic Church. A lot of all eyes on Rome. Apparently, I'm personally offended that Volodymyr Zelensky has expressed that he wants to use this this opportunity to go approach Donald Trump at a funeral service.
Oof.
That
The guy's a douchebag. That's what he does.
what is, like, seriously, like
when he goes to the
that.
White House, he's a douche. You know,
seriously, like, really, you're going to go accost President Trump at the Pope's funeral?
It's not the time or the place. And if you do it, you shouldn't be letting anyone know. At least it should be very like discreet, you know.
Zelensky has broadcasted that he's gonna, and he's told Giorgia Meloni, who is, you know, kind of the effectively the host state leader, that that's his intention. And, you know, if I were the Secret Service, I would be stop right there. You're not coming close to President Trump. This is not the time or place. Goodbye, dude. Like,
it's shocking. It's shocking he gets there. It's shocking they let him through with that little Decepticons tracksuit that he wore to the White House. He had the little Decepticons thing. I was like, that's the coolest thing about him. But he apparently doesn't own any 3-piece suits.
No, his wife has all the shopping duties. She gets to go shopping at Chanel and all that stuff. And, you know, like along the Champs-Elysees. So, you know, it's not him. He dresses in kind of like a like the way Steve Jobs used to dress, right? There was like kind of a uniform that Steve Jobs always wore.
Yeah.
Same type of thing.
Steve Jobs probably owned a suit or two. I mean, I'm not an overdresser, but I'll podcast in, you know, a thermal or something. But if you go to the White House or you go to a state funeral, the funeral for the Holy Roman Pontiff, get dressed. We're going to be watching.
Oh, wow. I wonder, that's a good point. I wonder if Volodymyr Zelensky is actually going to put on a suit to pay his respects at, you know, for the funeral.
He'd better.
Holy moly. Yeah. I didn't even think about that.
No, I'm sure. I have little faith in him, but I suspect he will do the right thing.
I don't. I think there's enough douchebaggery in that guy that he thinks he's a
that's so over the top. It's so ridiculous.
I think
that would be more over the top than wearing what he with the Decepticon.
The Oval Office was really bad, but still, this is at a whole different level.
Yeah, well, I guess that is reason to tune in tomorrow if at 4:00 in the morning for us, Ted, just to see if Zelensky, and then you could fall back asleep because it's 4 in the morning for us.
No, I don't even want to. It would mean that that society has become so depraved that we might as well just like hang it up.
Like what? Yeah, that's that.
I mean, especially because if he does that, you know, people will make excuses for him too.
Well, but like I said, it's demagoguery. This guy thinks he's a demigod, and you know, it's gross. It's gross. It's gross what he's done to the whole, you know, Christian faith in Ukraine.
Well, that's true. He banned an entire church.
All of it. All of it's just disgusting. It's gross. So what are you gonna do? So we'll see. We'll see if he shows up tomorrow, and I kind of hope the Secret Service is like denied, like no entry.
That could happen.
That'd be hilarious. All right. We'll leave you be. Timothy J. Gordon, thank you so much.
Tim.
You guys can check out Tim's podcast. It's called Rules for Retrogrades. It can be found on YouTube, anywhere that podcasts are syndicated. His latest book, The Case for Patriarchy, is out, along with a series of other books that we had on screen already. And I'll put up your website here. See more there at timothyjgordon.com. Thank you so much, Tim. Always a pleasure to hear your insights because you're obviously very well versed.
Thank you, guys. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, happy Easter to you both.
You too.
Thank you. Happy Easter. Bye-bye.
Yeah.
Well, good stuff. And it's always fun to, I know Tim doesn't like to think of us as still as young, and I guess technically we're not, Ted.
Who's
in
this
our
us?
mid-40s.
I'm 61.
I know. Well, Tim Gordon and I are the same age. We could have gone to high school together, and you know, relative to, let's say, Pope Francis, who was 88.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of, you know, technically we're half his age, so technically still kind of young. You know, we're kind of, it's middle aged, but that's fine. So it's always kind of cool to hear somebody that's not 75 years old give their perspective that is so traditional in their Catholic values, because you don't, it's almost jarring to find it coming from somebody on the younger side, right? Like an Xer, right? An Xer or millennial. Mm-hmm. So it's kind of like, whoa. Anyway, producer Robbie popping you on stage because
I had a feeling he's chomping at the bit.
Yes, but Robbie says we have an ad to get to, I believe.
All right, put it up and I'll read it.
Go for it, producer Robbie.
One second here. I'm getting it posted for you right now. Run a little bit slow.
All right, no worries. We can talk theology. All right, here we go. Off to the races here. If you're looking for a great online place for news, discussion, and entertainment, then check out Truth Social. It's Donald Trump's social media website. You'll get breaking news stories and commentary from top media figures like me, Ted Rall. If you want to see Trump's legendary Truth Social posts, then get on Truth Social today. Join a growing community of patriots on a free speech platform designed to avoid censorship and cancellation by big tech. Make your voice heard. Join the movement. Join Truth Social.
Alrighty.
All right. So there you have it.
There we go.
We're rolling right into the weekend. And now I'm actually curious. Okay. Are we putting up bets? Zelensky, suit or his usual tracksuit?
Suit.
Robbie?
I don't know. It's going to depend on just how if he gets his cocaine hit that morning. I don't know.
I'm going with tracksuit.
I mean, if he's stoned, I'm going to go with the tracksuit. I mean, that is his costume. But if he's actually going to try and pretend to be a statesman, he'll wear a suit.
To be a civilized human being.
Right. But, I'm saying tracksuit.
Well, I mean,
just watch.
Well, I mean, here's what I'm thinking: is that the guy is a douchebag of the highest order. That's just a fact. Also, people forget the fact that Zelensky's Jewish. So why would he dress up for a Catholic funeral?
That doesn't matter. There's like lots of there's going to be like Muslims and all sorts of people.
I've gone to Jewish weddings, and it's not like I'm going dressed like a harlot. I'm not Jewish.
Well, no, I completely agree. But you got to remember, I mean, Zelensky. I mean, he's for him, it's all about marketing, right? Like whenever
I say tracksuit.
Whenever he reaches out to his good friend Bibi about getting some of that sweet Israeli loving, he likes to play the J card. So I mean, why not? Sure. I mean, you have it, so do it. Part of his brand is looking like a janitor. I mean, give the dude a mop and a bucket. He can go to the funeral. He can clean up. After whatever accidents have to happen. Whenever the 104-year-old cardinal just craps himself, it happens. So I mean, I could see it. He has a role. But I don't think it's a statesman.
Yeah, I think it's going to be. That is going to be.
Well,
we'll see.
We'll see.
I feel like
But Robbie and I are both voting suit.
I'm voting tracksuit.
If
it'll be a suit, all right, but a tracksuit.
if he wants to be taken seriously for the first time, he'll wear a suit.
Yeah.
I think it'll
be. It's like let me put it this way: if he doesn't,
and I think he's going to try to steal the thunder.
No, I mean, it's just not. It's not your day. Here's the Pope's day. It's the Church's day.
Well, Zelensky is a little worm, and Trump already does not like him. Trump doesn't want to go to the funeral anyway. He's doing it because he has to.
Trump and I have that in common.
And then if Zelensky does go, and to Ted's point, it's not the time or the place. It's going to piss Trump off that much more. But it's just going to be an issue of how much cocaine does Zelensky have on board versus how much Diet Coke does Trump have on board. That's going to be the determining factor.
Diet Coke. It's a hell of a drug.
Is he going to have his red button? Is he going to be able to push it for his aide to bring him the Diet Coke there in the cathedral?
Probably. Well, all right, guys.
You're muted, Ted.
We're going to watch. Yeah, Ted. Oh, he took his headphones off. So whatever it is, we can't hear Ted. He's muted. Anyway, that'll do it, guys. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing from Timothy J. Gordon. Whatever
I hear you guys.
Agree with him, whether you agree with him, disagree with him. He's an interesting guy
he's a super interesting guy.
Very interesting, very knowledgeable, and worth a listen. So we appreciate you tuning in. Have a great weekend, everybody. We'll be back on Monday, 10 a.m. Eastern as usual. Make sure you guys hit the like and the subscribe button wherever you're consuming this content to support this little channel, because we can't rely only on Truth Social to support us here.
And sorry again about the glitch earlier. I have no idea what the hell happened. That was weird.
Yeah, I don't know. We're trying to figure that out. All the software stuff.
I
All right,
blame
guys.
Clovis.
I think it was X. I think he was just caught up on yesterday's buffer. I think that's what happened.
Super weird. No idea. All right. All right, guys. Have a great weekend. Adios, amigos. We'll see you Monday. Bye.
Bye-bye.